Hello and welcome to Our Irish Life. So today's video is for those of you that may be considering a move to Ireland and if you may want to bring your pets with you. So I'm going to be covering what is involved in importing pets into Ireland. Now, as always, I am not an expert on these things. I have literally compiled some useful information using the Citizens Information website, which I will post the link for below. And I'm going to just go through the general steps to try and keep it as simple as possible. So if you are considering moving to Ireland and bringing a pet with you, please ensure that you check all of the details yourselves before you go, because as I said, I am not an expert. Also, if you are new here, then welcome. And I also have a variety of other videos that may be of use to you for if you're considering moving, so please do check them out if you get a chance. So yeah, we're going to be starting with importing pets with you if you're considering moving to Ireland. So obviously this is strictly controlled here so that we can avoid the spread of diseases like rabies and stuff like that. So there are a few steps involved. So you can get very detailed information on this from the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine website, which I will also link below. Now there is quite a lot of information in this, so I am going to be consulting my notes here in front of me. So please forgive me if I'm looking up and down all the time. I just can't possibly remember all of these off by heart. So yeah, we're going to start with if you're coming from an EU country. So it also applies to countries that I will include in the screenshot here. So if that is you, then these are the steps that they have listed on the Citizens Information website. So the first step then is microchipping. So this also only applies for cats, dogs and ferrets. There are different requirements for like rabbits, rodents and birds, which I'm not going to go through in today's video, but I'll also link a website below. So for your cat, dog or ferret then, they have to be microchipped before they get vaccinated against rabies. So the chip also needs to be readable by a device that works to ISO 11785. So that is something to know, and it can be checked with your vet as to the specifications of the particular chip they are using, just to ensure that it can be read once you get over here, so there are no issues. Another option is also to bring your own chip reader so that you can have that there on standby for if there are any issues. So step 2 then is a vaccination then. So your pet will need to be vaccinated against rabies after the microchipping has been done. So they need to be at least 12 weeks old, and after the vaccination, the appropriate amount of time needs to be left to allow for immunity. So this will be provided on the data sheet for the vaccination, which you can also go through with your veterinarian. But then it also needs to be at least 21 days after this has been done. So even if the immunity is there before that time, you still need to wait the 21 days. So just something to be aware of. So if your pet has received a booster vaccine then, so they may have originally got a rabies vaccination, then the wait time doesn't apply for immunity. They're okay to go as they are. So just something to note. So step 3 then is your pet passport. So if you're traveling from an EU country or one of the countries in the list I showed previously on a screenshot, then you will need a pet passport, and it will need to be stamped to show that the vaccination was given by the vet as well. So you just get that from the EU country that you are coming from. So step 4 then is a tapeworm treatment. So this specifically applies to dogs, not to cats and ferrets. So they need to be treated for tapeworm each time they enter Ireland. So if you're moving here and it's just the once, then it will just be the once. And so the treatment needs to be given by a vet between 1 and 5 days before you arrive in Ireland, as per the Citizens Information website. So, and it also needs to be recorded on their EU pet passport, as I've mentioned previously. So those are the 4 main steps for if you are coming from an EU country. It is a little bit simpler. So now we're going to go through the non-EU countries. Also, a really important point to note is that the country the pet is traveling from is what you are basing the entry requirements on, not where they normally live and not where they were born. So you may have taken the pet with you from an EU country to a non-EU country, which is fine, but because you'd be traveling from a non-EU country to Ireland, then that is what you are basing the requirements on. So just a really important point to note before you do look into any of this yourselves. Okay, so for non-EU countries then, steps 1 and 2 are the same. So you have the microchipping that needs to be done before you get your rabies vaccination. You need to ensure that the chip can be read once you get here, and then allow for the amount of time to pass for the immunity from the rabies vaccination to work. So steps 1 and 2 very similar if you want to go back on those. Then step 3 then is the passport. So if you don't have a valid EU issued pet passport, you will need to get an EU health certificate and get it signed and stamped by an official government vet in the country that you are traveling from. So once you do this, then the certificate is valid for 10 days after it has been stamped and can be used for 1 movement into the EU. And then once it has been checked and stamped on arrival into the EU, then it is then valid for 4 months of travel within the EU or until your pet's rabies vaccination expires, whichever comes first. So then for step 4, this is a little bit different. So your pet will need to get a blood test. So the cat, dog or ferret, it needs to get a rabies serological blood test to ensure that the vaccine has worked. So according to Citizens Information, you need to wait at least 30 days from the original vaccination before the blood test, and the sample needs to be sent to an EU approved laboratory. So if the blood test shows that the vaccine was successful, you still need to wait a further 3 months before travelling to Ireland. And either the original test certificate that was received from the lab or a copy of it needs to be brought with you when entering Ireland as well. So for step 5 then, it's the tapeworm treatment. Again, it specifically applies to dogs. So they must be treated for tapeworm each time they enter, and they must be given the tapeworm treatment by a vet 1 to 5 days before arriving in Ireland. So further step then for step 6 is that you need to provide advance notice when you're bringing a pet from a non-EU country. So you need to tell the Irish port or airport authorities before your arrival, so ideally a week beforehand or a minimum of 24 hours beforehand. So you do this by completing an online form in the advance notice portal, and you can only enter through certain ports and airports. So I'm going to put a screenshot up here so that you're aware of which ones are okay to go through. So step 7 then, you have a compliance check. So on arrival into Ireland from a non-EU country, your pet will need to undergo a compliance check. This also needs to be arranged in advance by completing the online form from the advanced notice portal. I will also link that below just to make it a little bit easier. So in the event that you go through all of these steps and they still don't comply, it could be that your pet would be returned to the country you have travelled from at your expense, or it may be put into quarantine to go through all those steps again to ensure that they comply with EU legislation. So really important to check that you're doing everything correctly. I know it can be a little bit overwhelming, all of the information and different things that you need. So I have tried to just simplify it down a little bit, but I'm sure if you contact the relevant authorities, they will help you through this process and answer any questions that you may have as well. All of the websites I've provided below give an awful lot of information, so super helpful, so that it will hopefully make this process a little bit easier for you. As I said before, for birds, rabbits and rodents, the guidance may be different. I haven't covered that in this. The guidance I have given you there literally applies to dogs, cats and ferrets. so just be aware of that. So that is it from me for today. So as you can see, there is a lot to consider when you are going to be bringing a pet to Ireland. So please be sure to check all the details carefully, as nobody wants their little fur baby left behind. So thank you so much for joining us today. And as I said previously, there are lots of other videos from ourselves that may be of use to you if you are considering a move, and if you are, we wish you the best of luck with that. And we hope to see you again soon for more of Our Irish Life.